Welcome to Conveyancing Matters with Lorraine and Stu. Join us for a chat about all things property.
Hi, so I'm with a very special guest today. It's Reverend Michael. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Stu.
Good stuff. So unfortunately, you've got a very significant story to tell that's really relevant to all the lawyers out there that are acting for buyers, and of course anybody in general that's looking to buy a property at the moment. So maybe if we rewind the clock, so when first of all, and give me a brief bit of history as to exactly what happened.
So August 2021, I discovered through my next door neighbour in Luton, where I lived or had a property, that my house was being occupied by somebody else. They questioned whether I'd actually sold the house or whether there was something untoward going on. I discovered very quickly that there was something untoward going on, and through speaking to the police and visiting the property itself, I discovered that my house had been stolen. That someone had stolen my identity earlier on in the year, sometime around April, May time, by means of getting a duplicate copy of my licence, and then managed to go to a firm of solicitors and sell my property, all within the space of about 4 to 6 weeks.
It's absolutely incredible, isn't it? I think people out there that are watching this, they're either going to be really worried, which I think they should be, but there must be people out there that think, well, how can you steal a house? You can't go along, can you? Pick up a house and steal it. So I think the buzzword might be title fraud. So what happened after that? I mean, you must have been in an absolute, state of distress.
Well, I wondered how it had happened because
I bet you couldn't believe it.
I have the deeds.
Yeah.
There is no mortgage on the property. I paid that off a few years back. I own the deeds. So I had them, and I always thought, if you have the deeds, then you can't sell the property.
Yeah.
Not so, because it's all digitalised now. So every copy of a title deed is held electronically with the land registry. So it's a case of just moving documents electronically around, which enables a property to be sold, not whether you actually physically hold the document. So there's a bit of confusion initially. How could this happen? How can someone take something that I actually physically still have possession of? All this transpired as soon as I delved a bit further, got subject access request from DVLA, from the solicitors that purported to act on my behalf. And it just was a complete revelation to me about how easy this had actually been. Within the space of 4 to 6 weeks, somebody had done a huge amount of work to present themselves as me, to find a buyer for the property, and then to get it transferred by land registry into their name. Very distressing, but almost astounding at the same time, is how easy was this for someone to do. There were certain warning signs there that I think were ignored by various professions. So the house was sold for £100,000 less than its market value at the time. It was sold within 4 to 6 weeks, and the vendor never appeared to the firm of solicitors. So I think there were things within the whole story that are worthy of note. It was during the pandemic, and I recognise that a lot of systems changed.
Rushed off their feet as well. Lawyers were very busy then, so were shortcuts taken perhaps.
Absolutely. And I'm a mind that that checks weren't done, possibly, that should have been done to enable things to be checked as legitimate or not. In my case, it just seemed to go through very quickly. And I was left thinking, this is my house, but it's not my house anymore. What do I do now? And there is a mechanism within Land Registry to appeal against the fraudulent sale of a property. And I started that process immediately. But it took 2.5 years before Land Registry eventually woke up and said,
there's a problem.
It is yours. It is yours. We'll hand it back to you. So as it currently stands, I do own the property, but there's another element to this now, which I'm now starting to unpack.
So maybe if we rewind the clock, once the fraud had actually happened, most people's probably gut reaction would be to go to the police, which I understand you did. So what was the police's sort of attitude, and what did they do to maybe try and help?
Well, on the night that I discovered that the property had been stolen, I was still away from the house, living elsewhere in the UK. I asked the police to go around. They allegedly went to the property, and then when I caught up with them again later that night by phone, the police said, everything's fine. The people that are in there are legitimate. And I went, no, they're not. It's my house. They're not supposed to be there. And the police's reaction was, well, if you want to know more, sir, come and find out yourself. So the very next day, I jumped in the car, drove to Luton, went to the front door. Obviously, my front door key didn't fit anymore. Knocked on the door. Somebody opened the door, and I asked them who they were. They were a tradesperson doing some work on the house. I noticed, looking in through the doorway, that everything had gone. All the furniture was stripped out, all the carpets, curtains, everything that had been mine had gone, completely gone. And they were starting to do major refurbishment work in the house. I told the tradesperson that it was my house and that they were there illegally. They ran out the door and left me in the house.
Oh, blimey.
So they scarpered.
Yeah.
I then discovered they'd gone off to find the new owner, who lived a couple of streets away. But I was left in the house just thinking, what on earth has gone on here? A house that was just a shell now. I called the police again, and before they arrived, the new owner arrived, was adamant that they had bought the house and it was no longer mine, or it wasn't mine at all, and that I needed to leave. When the police then arrived, they said, well, the only way we're going to find out whether this is your house or your house is by looking on land registry and looking at a copy of the title. And lo and behold, 4 days earlier, the title had transferred into this new person.
So at this point then, the perfect storm, all of a sudden, you look on the land registry's title register, your name's not on there. It's Absolutely. In the name of the new person that had supposedly bought it.
Absolutely.
So again, they did nothing.
So the police said, you've got to leave now because it's not your house. Go and get a good solicitor.
Wow.
And how I got back to my home, I really don't know. I was in a state of shock, I think. But it wasn't until the next day when I started to kind of think a bit more logically about what can I do here? If the police are not going to believe me, then somebody must.
Of course,
So I then made a few inquiries. I wrote to the BBC on email. They were straight back in touch with me, and you and yours were really good at starting the ball rolling for me in this one. But it was very clear early on that the police had given me some inaccurate advice. They hadn't understood the situation, that this was a criminal offence, and that they now needed to do something in order to find out what had gone on and why my house had been stolen from under me. So 12 months at least, just ploughing through all the intricacies of what had gone on, revelation after revelation after revelation about how easy it was to steal my identity in the first place, and then to go through the process of somebody purporting to be me to sell the house. It was just mind-blowing, really. But I've gone through the courts to prove that it is my house, and the previous proprietor eventually withdrew their objection to my application for reinstatement. That was in April this year. Wow. They've received their compensation, and I eventually got the house back last week in November.
Okay, excellent. Well, at least you got it back, thank goodness. So if we go back to maybe looking at how the fraud actually occurred. So we were discussing before we started the interview that it all surrounded a fraudulent driving licence. As simple as that then?
Absolutely. So I don't know the detail of the timings on it because the applications are a little bit hazy here. But I am led to believe that an application was made in March 2021 to get a duplicate copy of my driving licence on a standard DVLA form, handwritten, not electronically, handwritten. Somebody had provided a copy of my tax code.
Okay.
So I suspect at that point the house had been broken into, and somebody had found a document somewhere in the house, an old document, with a tax code on it. And they'd used that as evidence of who they were in order to get a duplicate copy of the driving licence. So I'm led to believe that the duplicate driving licence was issued in May of that year. And what the fraudsters then did was they put another photograph on the driving licence. The driving licence was issued with my photograph on and all my details, with a different signature and a different title. So the Reverend had been dropped, and also the country of issue had changed as well. I live in Wales, so it had reverted back to England. But they had then changed the photograph in the driving licence. That then became the first thing that enabled them to start to go and get other evidence to make sure that they could be identified as me. So they got a bank account opened with TSB. What other evidence TSB asked for, I really don't know, because I don't know what they would have.
Would have had, of course.
And also a BT broadband account was set up in my name, so that they could set up a broadband account in the house, and evidence that they were operating some kind of communication system from that house. I then discovered that a company, a limited company, had been set up in my name with another individual who'd also had their house stolen as well in the UK. And we were directors of the property, directors of the company. And with all that evidence, and maybe a bit more, I don't know, this fraudster went to a firm of solicitors and said, "This is my house, I want to sell it." All done by email or telephone conversation. There was never any face-to-face contact with the firm of solicitors. So again, indicative of the time that we were in during the pandemic, but also great opportunity to commit fraud.
Of course. And what about the estate agent? Was there an estate agent involved?
Well, it was a kind of ghost estate agent. They didn't exist, but they did exist. So it was an
fraudulent agent that was maybe created from nothing.
Absolutely, and we suspect the estate agent was created by the fraudsters.
Of course.
They don't have an office anywhere. They have a registered address, which is a derelict house somewhere in the West Midlands.
Oh wow!
So they became the kind of platform through which the next proprietor then bought the property. Whether they were aware of what was going on at all, I don't know.
Who knows,
The police seem to think that they are an innocent party in all of this, but they went to the estate agents, we think, and managed to put in an offer, negotiate a lower offer, and then finally conduct the final transaction of the sale of the property.
Wow, it just seems absolutely incredible that somebody can go through this, and there's not more stops in place. So even after you've got the property back in your name, unfortunately, it doesn't even end there, does it? You've still got issues at the moment. So what are they?
Absolutely. So during the course of the summer, I was instructed by Land Registry to get some quotes from builders to rectify damage that had been done to the property. So I initially did a survey, which was done in August. That identified about £60,000 of work needed to be done on the house to bring it back to marketable standard. I then went through the process of getting building quotes, and the property was a mess, but still secure at that stage. It wasn't until a week last Friday when I went back to the property with another builder to do the final set of quotes that Land Registry wanted that I discovered that the front door lock had been knocked out, the back window broken, and the property obviously occupied. There was furniture in there again. And initially I thought it was squatters, but it transpires that the people that are in there at the moment claim to have a legitimate tenancy agreement with a company in Doncaster who know nothing of a tenancy agreement with a family in Luton. So it's another layer. So it's another fraudster who is selling tenancy agreements on Facebook Marketplace that people are totally unaware is fraudulent, and they're handing over large amounts of cash for a tenancy that absolutely doesn't exist in law. It's
just outrageous. And of course, the lasting effects of this, I suppose, are going to be unquantifiable. Just in its monetary terms, it's obviously cost you a significant amount that I'm guessing you're not going to be able to recoup all of this from the Land Registry under their insurance. So
all I can claim from Land Registry is repairing the damage that's been done to the property.
Yeah.
So whether it's £60,000-£70,000, they've got to pay up. That's enshrined in law. They've got to do that. But I've lost income.
Of course.
So rental income, I approximated around about £9,000. So I've lost £9,000. The previous proprietor, thank you very much, he's got that.
Yeah.
There's another £2,200 that the current occupants have paid over to someone that we don't know. That's another lot of money. And all my possessions, all my furniture that was in the property that my previous tenants were using, and all my personal belongings that were up in the attic, all gone. So again, you can't quantify that.
Yeah.
But somebody the other day was asking about the emotional stress.
The emotional stress must have been incredible.
That's been on me during this 2.5 year period. Can't claim for any of that.
Of course.
That's not provided for in the Land Registration Act. So, there are lots and lots of elements to this that no one will ever say you can be compensated for that, because it just doesn't. The system doesn't allow that to go.
And what would you say to people out there at the moment? Because I think people will probably be watching this. Obviously, they're going to be worried. And there are things out there that we can do. There's a new platform called Title Guardian that will actually send people that own properties push notifications at various trigger points along the way, that will possibly, alert them that a fraud could be taking place. There is something called Land Registry Alerts, which is, it's something which is better than nothing. It will let you know when the title's about to be changed. But just from a practical point of view, Mike, we spoke earlier, about almost treating every bit of correspondence you receive and everything almost with caution. It morally shouldn't be like that in this day and age, surely, should it? But you've got to protect yourself and really be mindful that in all kind of dealings in life, whether we're on the computer, we could be hacked, really, be careful, I suppose, is
Absolutely.
the moral of the story.
Be vigilant, and never immediately accept something at face value. I've already received 2 fraudulent approaches this week, one through someone purporting to be Royal Mail and someone purporting to be His Majesty's Revenue and Customs. So, you can't accept at face value what you see. You've got to check. You've got to make sure it's legitimate. I think as far as the property is concerned, when there's no mortgage on the property, that leaves people incredibly vulnerable. So my recommendation would be secure that somehow, or don't pay the whole mortgage off.
Yeah.
When there's a third party, a financier involved, then that will protect you to a certain extent. Not completely, but it will protect you to a certain extent.
No, because I think from our sort of legal point of view, if I was acting for a vendor, when the money comes over, I would repay the mortgage. So maybe the fraudster's just going to get less. So I suppose if they're going to go to the time of trying to create this fraud, they're naturally going to target properties that are unencumbered, because they're going to get more bang for their buck, aren't they?
Absolutely.
But I think, from a legal perspective, and to warn everybody out there, everybody that owns a property is actually at risk.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And, it's such a sad state of affairs, isn't it?
And things as simple as, if you are renting out your property, you're not living there, then make sure that all the contact details on the Land Registry website are up to date.
Yeah.
Mine weren't. That a mobile number was on there that I've not used for years.
Yeah.
So even if they had tried to contact me, which I know they didn't, they wouldn't have been able to get hold of me.
Especially if you're not living there.
Absolutely.
Always have an address for service.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Service address is critical.
Yeah.
Make sure every time you move, there is an address that they can contact you at.
Yeah.
That has got to be paramount in terms of protecting the property. But it's just being vigilant. It's making sure that the things you do are going to protect your investment.
Yeah.
And never take things at face value. Make sure that if there are things that are lying around that could identify you, and maybe someone used fraudulently, get rid.
Yeah.
Or store them in such a secure place that no one else can get hold of.
Definitely. Well, look, Mike, I really appreciate your time. Really appreciate you talking to us. I'm sorry it's under such horrible circumstances, but hopefully the legacy of this can actually be to pre-warn everybody else out there that, you've got to protect the biggest asset that you've got.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.